So if you think of marketing as a funnel, right? The very top, you've got brand awareness. Then you move into interest, where somebody has heard about your brand and they become interested in it. Then you've kind of got this optional level of the funnel, which is called research and registration. By the way, these are all called different things in different businesses, but research and registration, which is where somebody, for example, would give you their email address and you capture their information, which means you can then continue talking to them and then convert them. Then at the bottom of the funnel, you've got activation, which is essentially where the transaction happens. They become a customer. And then you've got reactivation at the bottom, which is around loyalty and repeat business. The brand awareness piece sits at the very top. It's obviously one of the most cost-effective, broader reach, really quite educational.
Doesn't create
about your
leads.
Values. No, not necessarily. However, the content, and that's obviously something that we should really talk about, and the content that you're using at the top of your funnel about your business, I think, it would be almost worth talking about that as a separate pillar, because I think the way that that's changing since the COVID-19 pandemic has also really kind of shaped what businesses are doing now as well. But that brand awareness piece at the very top and the reactivation piece at the very bottom have two very different, areas and scopes with regard to the tactics that are being used and where the money needs to be spent. For example, to throw an idea out there, a key retention strategy or reactivation strategy at the bottom of the funnel can be email marketing. For example, you've got 1,000 members, their average lifetime value for you is X amount of dollars, and it could be 3 years, and you want to increase that to 5 years or ongoing, for example.
Forever
locked in. So, email marketing is a really, key tactic there. But what I'm trying to get to is that, for example, email marketing in the reactivation space is completely different to the tactics that you would use in the brand awareness space. If you're thinking about the funnel, brand awareness is where somebody is open to or searching for information. They may not be searching information. They could just be scrolling through their LinkedIn. They could just be sitting at a bus stop.
So what would you?
What I'm saying is that messaging that you said about CUB, yes, that is your brand messaging and your overarching USP or your strapline. However, what engages them at a brand awareness level is not that. It's something of value that you can add to their day, a blog, an educational piece about why networking is so epic when you're starting a business, why it's all about the people you know and not about what you know. It's these kind of educational plays, and those key categories of information and content really form the backbone, or should form the backbone, of your content strategy. These podcasts, perfect example.
So people are like, oh, I like this brand because it teaches me things.
Yeah, and then at the point where they become interested in your services, that's when you introduce to them the business principles and your strapline and your unique selling proposition.
Okay, very cool.
I actually saw my dream job come up on Seek. And at the time, LinkedIn wasn't really a big thing. LinkedIn jobs wasn't really a big thing. And I saw it, and it was the e-commerce and digital manager for Reebok, Australia and New Zealand.
That's a pretty
yeah.
job.
So they needed 5 years more experience than what I had. I think it was 10 years experience. At the time, I had 5. And I'm a real gym sport person. This is like it was my dream job. Anyhow, I got an interview, went in there, can't actually even remember the first interview at all. I just remember talking to the general manager, Carl Pullman, at the time, and walking into the True Alliance office in Alexandria and just kind of being blown away by all these fancy brands. Anyway, I had my first interview. I was invited back for a second, and I just knew I had to blow their socks off. So I came up with this really intensive 12 months digital and e-commerce strategy.
Pre-done. So you've done the strategy.
I'd done everything.
Yeah, that's pretty
I'd
awesome.
done everything. And I walked into that job interview, and I basically answered a few questions that they had, and I kept referring to this document that I had sitting on the table, like bound up for everybody, the panel. And anyway, we ended up getting to go through it, and I basically just started explaining the story about how I grew up in, little mini Reebok pumps, and kind of, told that story as well, and got the job. Which was crazy, but it was just epic. It was honestly epic working for the True Alliance brand house. So
what was your responsibility?
So I looked after all of the e-commerce So the entire e-commerce store for Australia and New Zealand, as well as all of the digital marketing strategy and execution across Australia and New Zealand
Oh my
for the
God, that
Reebok
is
brand.
absolutely huge. And you were very young at that. Like, you're still
Yeah.
very young. So can only imagine then you were extremely
It
young.
was unbelievable. I mean, I had an amazing team that we worked with. We were a very lean team, but everyone was incredibly hands-on. We were all extremely passionate.
What were some of the key lessons you took from management of people in that role, particularly as a younger manager?
You just have to listen so much. Like, stop talking and just listen sometimes, and just watch and learn and just dive headfirst into numbers, and I guess ask questions as much as you can, and leverage the people around you. Like, one of the most incredible things about being in a business of that size, and then a brand of that size that has, like, obviously an international brand house overseas, is that there are so many people who can help you and who want to help you, who've been there and they've done that before. I mean, at the end of that journey with Reebok, and the reason that it did end at that time was Adidas Group actually took back Reebok as a subsidiary. Australia and New Zealand was one of the last markets that they did that with.
Didn't know that.
They actually own Reebok. So my job was being relocated to Melbourne within the Adidas Group. And so one of my biggest projects to date was essentially the integration and the migration of the Reebok e-commerce platform into Demandware, which is a platform that Adidas Group used.
What are 3 ways to make a great landing page?
Okay, so I think first of all, it needs to be on brand. So for example, if someone non-marketing, as I was saying, could build an Instapage landing page, like, please make sure that it's aligned with your brand. Make sure the logo is correct. Make sure the logo is high resolution. Make sure the imagery is on brand. You know, basic things like that go a long way.
Me and Laura made that mistake once.
The story and the brand needs to feel, you know, it can't feel disingenuous. The user needs to go, oh, this is seamless. Yep. And if they're not thinking—
I'm on the CUB website.
Exactly. So it needs to feel streamlined. The second thing is making sure that your core message is clear and above the fold. So on a desktop, before someone scrolls down. On a mobile, again, it will be different, but before someone scrolls down.
But how do you identify what your core message is?
Your core message is often different from the user need. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you are trying to sell a discounted package for your Melbourne prospective members that's 50% less than the usual sign-up rate. Okay, so for example, say that you did, and at the top of that landing page, you would say, from a business perspective, no offense, you might say, for example, 50% off CUB memberships this month. What does that tell the user? Okay, great, there's a discount. Straight away, that's probably going to lose a little bit of value about your brand, but that's not actually what the user needs to know. The user actually, their user case scenario or their need as a business owner could be networking opportunities and relationships at your fingertips for 50% less this month, for example. So you need to kind of really reverse engineer your core message to be the user's need. Otherwise,
and then if you want to add something at the end to entice them, like a discount, for example, you can do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the third key thing, so we've got the branding, we've got the key messaging, and then the third thing is the call to action. And again, the call to action needs to be explicitly clear, explicitly easy, and it needs to lead them somewhere that, you know, takes them on that journey that's easy for them to check out or easy for them to register.
A call to action could be like what?
Again, depends on the objective. But for example,
Can I tell you a call to action that I hate when companies do? When they're like, oh, sign up today and have a free consultation to find out how crap your website is currently. You know, it's like, well, I know it's not free. You're just going to, even if it was good, you're going to tell me it's shit so you could sign me up. Like,
totally. I mean, there is a place for those. And I think in the consulting space, you know, doing a free consult with somebody to understand their business and giving them some free tips, regardless if it leads to something more or not, it does add value to that person. So I think there is a place for that. But I think the call to action needs to be extremely clear and back to the objective. So for example, if you know that no one is going to sign up to CUB without hearing and, you know, without knowing how amazing it is and, you know, basically, you know, hearing from some other members or understanding how many members there are, what the facilities are like, et cetera, then the call to action on that landing page could be something like learn more, because you know that you're going to automate a process after that to provide the people with that information and nurture them through the journey.
So it could be like, you know, apply today to discover exactly how you can benefit from our community of leading Australian
Correct.
entrepreneurs.
So, for example, the goal for that landing page would actually be in the middle of the funnel, which is kind of the registration point, i.e. submits an email address. And submits an email address as a goal, submitting an email address, I should say, is a much lower barrier entry than, and it's going to cost you a lot less than someone actually transacting. So, than putting in their credit card details, essentially. So you just need to make sure that that call to action is explicitly clear, whether it's learn more or buy now. It needs to be
obvious,
very obvious. And again, beside the message, the core message, above the fold. I mean, you can obviously have a lot of different call to actions throughout the page, but coming back explicitly to the purpose of a landing page, we're not on the services page of your website. We're not on the About Us page of your website. We're not on the testimonials. Those pages might have a different call to action because they're nurturing the user through that customer journey to the conversion point. On the landing page, it needs to be explicitly clear